Hello, everybody. It's Shar from Shar's Craft Haven. Getting started. Um, as you join, let me know you're in the chat. I'm going to spend a couple of seconds inviting folks and we'll get going. Sorry, I'm a little late on the start, even though I didn't give an official start. I've been teaching classes on lasers and stuff, and so I've been moving different things around, so moving my cameras and stuff around to teach others how to use the P1 and the M1 and that sort of stuff. So I had to reset up my space. Um, Hopefully you all are well. I know a lot of you are getting the P2 and running into snags or questions. So as you join, feel free to put your questions in the comments. As always, like and subscribe to get notified of more videos. Um, I will be moving across the US. I'm now in Cincinnati and I'll be moving way out west to California. And so probably the beginning of August is when I'll get back to doing regular live streams and videos, just as we get set up and settle in way out west. So again, let me know that you're here in the comments, and I'm going to send some personal invites to folks who said they'd be interested in joining. So we will see who all can make it. Again, this is super informal. I've been packing all day, so I'm a little tired, but I wanted to be available to you all. Not that I'm the most expertise, but I got a bit of a head start with the P2 doing beta testing, and I'd be happy to share the things that I've learned for you that have had it mere days. And I am so excited to see what you all do in the community. I've already seen some really exciting things that you all have made, and I'm excited to see that more in the future. So go ahead and let me know that you're in the chat, and we'll focus on what you all would like to hear about or see as questions come up. If there isn't something for a little bit of time, I'll go ahead and just start, messing around doing material settings and that kind of stuff. And if people see this later, hopefully what you see will be helpful. Again, as you get the machine, you want to make sure that you download the newest version of XES and that you do the firmware update. So hopefully everybody is along for the ride. If you haven't gotten it yet, it's super worth the wait. So hopefully this will help a little bit with patience waiting. Hey, Heather, good to see you. All right, let me send a couple more personal invitations to folks who said they had interest. Again, I apologize for not having a date in advance. I've been packing all day for a cross-country move, helping 3 little children pack as well, which is always an extra adventure. So, Heather, if you have questions or comments, feel free to put those in there. And we'll get to it. Have you already received your P2, Heather? And how is that going? I don't remember if you pre-ordered, if you're doing the trade-in program or that sort of stuff, but anything you'd like to see within reason or questions you have, feel free to put them in the chat. All right. Let me see if I have missed anyone else. I know a lot of people have been receiving their machines just recently, and so it's really exciting to see people saying how beautiful it is. My wife's reaction was the same. She's, "This is so beautiful." So yeah. All right. Let me check back in. Got it yesterday. Missing the rear mirror. Oh man. All right. Box was perfect too. Yeah, I've noticed a few. I've noticed a few people having some issues with cables disconnected. Um, yeah, I missed the delivery by like 10 minutes, and thankfully they didn't prop it up any way weird. But yeah, delivery can be a pain. Missing the rear mirror. I haven't seen that yet. Tube was chipped. Um, have they sent you a video on how to like replace the tube or anything like that? I know with the P1 that was, a big effort. It looks like with the P2, the tube is a lot more accessible easily. So hopefully replacing that will be a lot easier. Um, yeah, yep. I, I hope that there's a lot less issues now that they've switched away from FedEx. But you never know. Um, yeah, Nicole's awesome. Um, okay, so you're gonna have to drain it. Do you know how to drain it out? Did they send a video to you about how to drain the tube and change the tube? Because I know that can be a little challenging. Hopefully, if it's up high enough, you can drain it out. Hey Debbie, how do I like the P2 compared to P1? So there's a lot of advancements with the P2. I love the additional wattage. The build area doesn't feel as much larger as I thought it would feel. And I think part of that is because the bed size is larger than the working area, and I haven't quite mapped out the edges to that. I love the riser. So like the P1, you had to like put it up on things to do, large rotary kind of stuff. The P2 with the riser, it feels really secure. Some of the things I missed from the P1, which I don't know if eventually they'll get back to. I loved Laser What You Draw. My kids really got into it. And that was a way to use Sharpies, and then it would automatically do your design. There's also a version of it where you put the paper on one side, you draw on the paper, and then the other side it does that. So I really miss that feature. I'm not sure that it's, live or die, but a lot of what I do is educational with the machines, and so working with students and stuff, anything that removes the barrier from design to making. I can still do a lot of that, and I did do that with a project I think I shared where I did handwriting for a teacher gift. Do I miss the crumb tray? Well, it has a crumb tray. It still has a crumb tray. It's actually easier to clean. I think you can see that. It's actually easier to clean. So I sort of miss the honeycomb, and I sort of don't miss it. I miss it when I'm doing small stuff that I'm worried about falling through. But most of the time the slats are just way easier. I can get stuff out. Cleaning the honeycomb is probably my least favorite thing with the machine. So I do miss the honeycomb just for the ability to do small stuff. Like I did a lot of acrylic inlay and things like that, where I had small stuff and I didn't want it to fall through. So I don't miss the crumb tray itself. This has a crumb tray-ish. I do miss the honeycomb more than I thought I would, but that's only a very small amount of the time when I'm doing tiny stuff. But most of the time I'm doing larger things now anyway. But who knows? Maybe I've seen people come up with honeycomb substitutes, so maybe that will be something. Um, no, it won't. Honeycomb, no, it won't fit at all. This is a lot bigger, and the slat height is like very particular. So like if you don't have your slats all the way in and have it flat down, then you have focus issues. And so there really wouldn't be a way to put the honeycomb in without like a lot of other figuring, especially trying to make it level. I've seen other people that have done like lattice work kind of stuff. Um, there's like metal, almost like small chain link fence kind of stuff that people have tried. Um, all right, so what else was? Uh, okay, you had to buy a tube, Heather? Really? I They made you buy a tube when it arrived broken. Yeah, that's interesting. I would make sure that it's not a free replacement. Because if it cracked during shipping, that should definitely be on them. Bit the bullet, but bit the bullet, not but. Oh yeah, bit the bullet. Yeah. So things I really like about it so far, and like I said, I've used it for a couple months, and then we've gotten busy packing. Um, I love how fast it cuts. Like when I mean, I really got giddy. I was pretty tired, but I really got giddy when I started doing cutting, and I could cut faster and faster and faster. And it was crazy that it was cutting through, and there just wasn't the same charring that I saw with the P1. I was expecting more charring because it's extra wattage, and I didn't see that. It just kept cutting cleanly, and there wasn't the same charring in the edges. So I think that's what I'm most excited. Um, okay, just drain the fluid. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and I helped somebody else drain their laser, the P1, and it's not a big deal. You just got to make sure you have something large enough, and you have to be really careful not to get any antifreeze on yourself. So like wear gloves, and just be really careful with that because it is poisonous if ingested. So don't play around with the antifreeze coolant. So, and if you think that there might be glass in it, I had my P1, I had a crack, and so I actually strained the coolant as it came out to make sure there wasn't any glass or anything in it when I refilled it. All right, any other questions people have? Otherwise, I'll just go around and I'll do some playing in XES, and um, we can see where we go from there. All right, so something like aluminum foil work instead of honeycomb. So I've thought about that. I think the flashback wouldn't be great, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the CO2 laser would do to aluminum foil. Actually, I mean, I think the heat generated might cut it. Um, so I've thought about having aluminum foil under the slats, so like parts wouldn't fall as far. Because some people that are having issues with parts falling out, and then a cut comes again next to it, and they're getting hit by that other cut. You can always pause the machine and remove pieces. It makes it a little bit annoying. You can also play with the settings so that things don't fall out. So like bumping the power back. I've actually, for the longest time, I didn't have things fall out, and then I did a live stream and it cut and it fell. It fell immediately. So, hey monkey, good to see you as well. Um, yeah, but back to the aluminum foil. I know some people were having issues with actually seeing their object on the bed, and so some things that can help with that is you can actually put paper on it. Yeah, hi monkey, good to see you. So you can actually put paper on it. So like I can probably grab some clear acrylic, So you can put paper on it so you can see it to line it up. When I've had a hard time seeing, I've actually used the slats as my ability to see edges, because the slats I can see pretty well. You can also change the color of the layer, and by changing the color of the layer, you have better contrast. So, like if you're doing black acrylic and your layer is black, changing it over. But other people have put like paper or something behind, so in the bottom of the crumb tray, just so they can see the edges. Just make sure to remove anything that's flammable before you start the laser up. Again, it's not always the case. Most materials, there's high contrast. Like, wood is easy to see. All right. Any other questions? We can play around some. I don't know. Is yours on the way? Have you gotten yours yet? I know Heather's waiting to repair hers. But do you have any questions? Do you all have any questions about XES or designing or like file type, that kind of stuff to get you running? I know there's a bit of a delay. I'll plug, this isn't a paid plug, but I'll plug the Noun project. It's got a subscription. It's like $40 a year, but it has tons of SVG shapes. And the SVG files are great because you can engrave with them. You can also cut with them. They already have the cut lines in, and if you get the license, there's licensing on being able to use it for commercial use. Obviously, you can't resell the files, but you're able to use them to make things, which is a big deal for people starting out. I've used derivatives of works to jumpstart me, using simple shapes. I find they're stained glass, so if you search stained glass, you can do a lot of really cool acrylic inlay using those beginner shapes. Hey Joe, what'd you miss? I was just talking about some of the stuff when you first get the machine. What all have you done, Joe? Have you had any fun projects with the P2 yet? Are you still getting it figured out? If you have questions, I know you're more of an XCS expert coming from the D1, but if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. And yeah, so I think I'll move over to software. Again, if you guys have any questions, let me know. So XCS is a really, I don't want to say simple, but it's not an old software. So they're still adding stuff in, they're still figuring things out. Having a lot of fun with acrylic. Awesome, Joe. So still figuring things out. The very basics is, up here is the machine. So refreshes the image. So it'll take a picture again. Close view allows me to move the camera that's in the laser head. So if I wanted to put something really close by what's already there, I could do that. Image is how you import your file. Insert, you're inserting shapes. They have more complicated shapes. If you want pre-done shapes, text is simple. You type the text in here, you can change point, typeface, style. I believe there's a way, I think on the community they show you how to install additional fonts. I haven't tried that out recently, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if any of my fonts are in here. I'd have to look through, but I believe there's a community document that describes how to do that. So here's your layer, and then over here, scoring, engraving, and cutting. and then you can put in your own settings. It actually saves them by type. So I can have a scoring setting for the same material, and then an engraving setting for the same material, and so on. I can even have multiple settings based on, this is my Baltic light, so it's a really light engrave, and then cutting. And then over here it says what it is, so it's a text as opposed to a vector or a bitmap image. And then here I can have it ignore this entire layer. And as we get more layers, I copy and paste, and then right click and let me move it to another layer. I can line things up, and then I can have it ignore one of the layers. So I can have it ignore this and just do the other one. Or I can have both of them selected and have the output on. And again, it'll let you know that you have multiple selected just in case. Alright, so over here is the close view. So I think Joe. Alright, how do you turn the close view off? So here we go. So right here, I right clicked, and then I can say delete close view. And that gets rid of the close view. So I think that answers your question. Turn the close view off. I'm not sure if there are other questions. But yeah, so adding close view, you click up there and left click. And then if you want to remove that, or you can hide background. So that's hiding your material if it's distracting. And then right here, right click, and then delete close view. Allows you to take that close view off. Alright, it is simple. I wish P2 auto refreshed after opening and closing the lid like M1 does. Maybe it's just a personal preference of mine. Yeah, so I think part of why they changed how it does that is because there were issues with the P1 of when you open and close the lid, it like wiped everything. It wiped settings out and stuff like that. It would be nice if it was a toggle, opening and closing the lid automatically refreshed. It also, when you have both of them engaged, so we'll say I do close view, when you do refresh, it refreshes the background and it refreshes the close-up view. So that might be something that would also be interesting to have a toggle for, if you only wanted it to, do one versus the other. Alright. Other XCS questions or other things from XCS that you've learned, Monkey, that you think first time folks, would need to know. Vector is pretty simple. You're drawing vector lines. When you connect the last one, it becomes a shape. You can deform, you can scale the shape, that kind of thing. If you want to do a simple shape to cut out. Up here, there's a bunch of things: outline, array, smart fill, which I have not gotten to work very well. I don't know if you have, Monkey. Hey, Andrew, welcome. Thanks for joining. Arranging is the super simple. You want these things to be aligned horizontally. Line them all up. Reflecting, combining. The basics of the combine, you can do a lot of really cool stuff with. Let me grab a few shapes and demonstrate those. Because it looks simple, but you can do some really cool stuff just with shapes. So, alright, let's say we're engraving that. So then there's different kinds of combining. So uniting, if I united this, it would just disappear because the C is completely inside of the other one. Subtract is I think of that as the cookie cutter one, where you're cutting one shape out of the other. So like with this one, that might be helpful to do. So engrave, let's make this a different color so we can see it. And then let's do subtract. So there we go. So we've cut the shape out of the other one. Now we have a, I don't know, cool looking, cool looking eyeball shape. Yeah, cool looking eyeball shape. There we go. Eyeball shapey kind of thing. So yeah, cookie cutter is awesome. And then other combined, there's unite, and then there's subtract, which is the cookie cutter, and then there's like whatever's in common, which can help you with some Etsy files where it's got overlaps and things that you don't want it to do both of them. A lot of sloppy designers won't fix their layers well, and so you've got to do some cleanup work on those. Alright, how do you do a shape without connecting those dots at the end? How do you do a shape with... So if they're not connected, then it's not really a shape. So if I did this, it would just cut this flap. It wouldn't actually cut it completely out. So if it's not a closed figure, it's going to remain attached. It's going to remain attached with the wood. If you're wanting to, I think maybe what you're asking is if you're wanting to just draw a line, you can hit escape and that will just give you that line. So if you don't want to finish the shape, you can do the dots you want to do and just tap escape and it will stop doing the pen tool. So maybe that was more of what you're asking. So say you just want that shape, hit escape, and then you have that vector line. So maybe that was more of what you're asking. All right. Slat placement. Yep. Yeah, so slat placement, super important. Thanks, Monkey. Yeah, you might, for some things, you might want to have a bunch of things next to it. Yeah. Absolutely. So what Monkey's saying for posterity is depending on how you arrange your slats, I'm using my hands like you can see me, how you arrange your slats is really important. If you have too few of them and you're cutting something out, if there's, it's cut completely out and there's only a slat in the middle, yeah, it will act like a seesaw and it'll fall and that can cause a head strike. So yeah, you want to place your slats sufficiently for your work. All right, let's get back to questions. Yeah, no, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, if you're doing something like CNC plasma, yeah, tip up. Yeah, you want to be careful. The 55W, even more so than the other lasers, it has some serious wattage, so you can have a head strike. You can hit your material again, which can cause issues. All right, other questions people have. I'll keep going through. This, and if you have questions, please feel free to write them. And we've got some experts in the chat who might be able to help as well. All right, so let me change colors here. And so I'll go through the path tools. All right, so we've gone through. Let me just select these two. Shift select, there we go. All right, so unite, put them together, subtract the cookie cutter, unite, overlap. And so right now, all we have with that is this tiny little area here. But there are times when uniting overlap would be helpful, and then subtracting overlap, like I said before, it can fix some Etsy file issues where they're designing poorly and you don't want it to cut twice. I personally do most of this kind of robust editing in Inkscape, INKSCAPE .net. It's a free SVG software. Anything that's really robust I pre-do in there. Reflect is mirroring. That's really important if you're like back engraving mirror acrylic. It's really important to make sure you mirror it. So you would engrave the back of the mirror acrylic, and then I usually paint it for contrast. So you take the mirror backing off, and then you paint in this for contrast, and you'd have the reflective side down. And so that reflecting is helpful for anything where you need it to be mirrored. Okay. Oh yeah. Also, you need to mirror. You need to mirror on stamps as well, and stamps are cool, in that they're also negatives. So, say if we wanted to make "hello" as a stamp, we would actually, let me clear this space out. Since you bring up stamps, all right. So, say we want to do a stamp. Let's, we'll just make it a rectangle. Alright, here we go. With stamps, let's see if it'll unlock. There we go. With stamps, because of the time it takes, you actually want as little extra space around it as possible. It makes it easier to line up. And if you have a huge stamp, it's harder to see where it's actually going to be. So yeah, we want to mirror it, and then let's change the layer on this, make it more visible, and then engrave. So what we want to do with this is let's align it. There we go. Align. Nope. We want to align horizontally center, vertically center. Okay. And then I believe that I want this to we want to send it to the back. There we go. Alright. And so what we want to do is we want to subtract, which is the cookie cutter. And so what it's going to do is it's going to engrave all the blue, and it's going to leave the open space. And so if we're doing a stamp, we want this to be raised. And so by engraving away everything around it, that will give us our stamp shape. We also want to have a cut line around the outside of it. And so that would be a separate layer to cut the stamp out. All right. Yeah, slats being high are, yeah. So thanks, Andrew. Yeah, slats being flat down in there is really important. And depending on how you put them in, so I always, again, I'm gesturing to the camera that you can't see. I always put them in to the back of the machine and then down, because there's give there. If you put them in the other way, it's a bit harder to get them flat. I did make a video for xTool. I don't know if they've posted it yet, talking through like your first job. And so slats was one of the things Monkey had mentioned and others had mentioned to make sure if the slats aren't level, it doesn't matter if your wood's flat, you're still going to have essentially out of focus areas, because the net the net of the setup is wonky, and so things will be out of focus. Yeah, it's a great thing to add to Quick Start Guide. Absolutely. All right, other questions. So yeah, so this would be a basic stamp. Like I said, you would want to have the cut. I even have started doing an inset cut that's clear of this. I had a couple times where I accidentally shifted my cut line ever so slightly, and then there was a raised part in the rubber, and it was a pain to try and cut away that raised part. So now I have sort of a bleed where I actually engrave a little bit extra, and then I have my cut line for my stamp inset ever so slightly to get rid of that possibility. So, okay, so rotary. Yeah, rotary, some of the things I'm seeing with the rotary, let me go back to the room. Um, so some of the things I'm seeing with the rotary is you need to be really careful about overscan. And so overscan is when you're engraving, there's a part where it's slowing down to change directions. And so in Lightburn, you can tell it a percentage over um, with the XCS. Depending on how fast it is, there's more overscan. And what people are finding is when they're using the RA2, RA2 Pro, um, depending on where they've put the chuck, how they've attached the chuck is actually proud, and so the overscan is actually hitting that. And so you can change the jaw setup. You can do some things to give more space between your object and the chuck that's holding it, so that you're not hitting it with overscan. So that, yes, exactly. Yeah, so that's something to be aware of when you're doing your setup. Um, I I honestly, for most things, unless I'm doing a round, unless I need a lot of the thing, um, I find it really easy. Like this was done. It was cheap, so it doesn't have high contrast, but um, this was done without the rotary at all. So um, this was pretty easy to do. It was fast to do. Again, if I were to buy another one, it was just a super cheap Dollar Tree $5 tumbler. I just wanted to practice. I did this with curve service mode, and it was really easy to do. So you can do a lot of things without the rotary. Obviously, if I wanted to do full wrap or other things like that, I would definitely want the rotary. Um, yeah, a bunch of cheap things. Dollar Tree is great for cheap things, especially glass. Um, got some clay pots to play with, which is also cool. So maybe you can see um, some engraving and then playing around with scoring on the clay pot. So again, this was just practicing on different materials with curved surface mode. So yeah. All right, let me see if there are other questions. And clay pots are super cool. Um, especially scoring on them was crazy fast. So yeah, other things with curved surfaces, if it's clear, you need to have a way to see it. So with the laser that's bouncing off, I just used cheap tempera paint so that I could see the surface. Yeah, score and color. So here's some other. I think this was maybe used to be a pickle jar. I didn't completely clean off. So there we go. So flour. The pickle jar actually was really good. I did some Dollar Tree glass, and I think I did it too hard, and it started cracking. So it doesn't take a lot to fracture the surface of glass. So if you're doing glass, play around with cheap thick stuff, and then if whatever you're doing, bring it back a bit. Otherwise, let me grab the hurricane valve. So otherwise, it can have some microfractures. Again, this is Dollar Tree. You can sort of see it. There's some horizontal fractures, where it was just too much power. It engraved too deep. So, I stopped it because I didn't want it to shatter. But again, I think this was like 20 or 30 power. So it wasn't even a lot of power to begin with. It turned out really crisp. I was really happy with the results. I just needed to back off the power even more. so that it just, just was hitting the surface. And again, this is a curved surface mode, so I didn't need a rotary or anything with that, which I actually feel better about with fragile things, is not trying to attach it to the rotary. So, all right, let me check in settings for thin glass. No, I didn't paint the inside. I painted the outside, and that was just to see, just so that curved surface mode can get those dots. Was it the glass preset? No, I did this before there were any presets. Settings I used for the thin glass. Let me check really fast on that. So it was engraving. So I believe my settings were 30 power, which again, I'd probably do less than that. So maybe 8 power, and then I did around 400 speed. So XES is 10 at 300. Yeah, that's close. Another thing to factor in is how much paint you have on there. One I was really careful about, and another I wasn't, and I actually could see some residue where it was thicker and thinner. So that's something to be careful for. But yeah, 10% at 300, that would be a good starting part. Like I said, 8 is what I ended up at after going way too much, going 30 and then 20, and then scaling back. And then speed, you can go pretty fast, because again, all you're doing is trying to microfracture. So 400 speed might even be good as well. Let me move over a little bit. Oh. All right, let's see what other questions you all have. And again, Dollar Tree glass is super thin. So, yeah, and they have lots of super cheap stuff, like olive oil decanter, not decanter, olive oil, olive oil spouts, and they have lots of interesting shapes to play with if you're wanting to practice glass stuff. And like I said, what worked best for me was just, I believe this was a pickle jar, so, and those are free, if you like pickles. So saving those kind of glass things to practice on is really helpful. Any other material questions, or any other wisdom? I know that Monkey has a lot of great videos as well, so definitely check his channel out. And there's others that are putting out great videos. And I'm excited to see what you all make. I know Joe's addicted to acrylic, which is fun. But yeah. So yeah, acrylic, super fun. I've done a bunch of stuff. Most of it's been gifts, so it's been given away. I think I showed, or it's in the video, a neat project. Even though there's not laser what you draw, I did a crayon project with my daughter's class, and so the teacher had the circles that it needed to fit in, and just had the kids Sharpie their names, and I just took a picture with my cell phone, brought it into Inkscape, and then got their names as a SVG, and then made crayons. So, here's the blank crayon. Most of it was scoring, so altogether each one of these only took like a minute to 2 minutes, which is like super fast. That's cutting, scoring, and engraving. I think the most one of the names took was like 2 minutes, and it was just because it was a longer name. But again, like this can really make a huge difference to teachers. They can send you home with papers with names, handwritten names. So these are these are kindergartners, you know, writing their names out, and then it can be a great keepsake for them. And it's low tech. They're using a Sharpie, and I actually made her a stencil out of Mylar so that she could circle on the paper where to keep the kids' names within, to standardize them, which helped a lot with design process. But then, you know, we ended up, I could probably bring up that file if that's interesting to y'all's. But it can make some really cool stuff happen. Really, I mean, the only limitations to the machine, other than like physical ones, is whatever your imagination has. All right, so let's get. Let's get that file up. Any other questions you all have while we're at it? Another cool thing, I'm not seeing anything. Another cool thing, let me bring this up. So, all right. Switch over. Okay. Another cool thing is dry erase boards. So this is set up. You can't really see the layers because they're overlapping. But the red goes all around. There we go. So the red goes all around. That's my cut layer, and then this is my scoring layer. Which, let me arrange them. 2, 2, 2. Horizontal, vertical. All right. So with dry erase board, you can make custom dry erase, and so this is a file I did on Lowe's dry erase, and so this is scored in, and then this is cut out, and they have a custom dry erase board to like practice writing on. I did a few of these in various shapes, and it's a fun way for kids to. This one was more like a coloring sheet, so they could draw their own face on it. Let me rotate it so you can see how it's supposed to look. There we go. Oh. Just kidding. 180. Nope. Alright. Just kidding. Let's try it again. There we go. And so this was like a coloring sheet. So they could color, there was a physical scoring that happened, and then they could color in the parts of the robot, and then they could write names or draw faces. And so again, you know, this is dry erase board. I also did one when my son was in kindergarten where it was letters. And so I did scoring and cutting out letters so that they could physically practice drawing the letters and have like the bumps, you know, they could feel the bumps so that they could stay on course with outlining their letters. So dry erase, it's messy. I would use the Lowe's. The Lowe's is thinner and it's cleaner, but again, you're gonna wipe off the edges of it because it does char. But it can make some really cool stuff like dry erase boards. Custom dry erase boards are awesome. With my son, we made him a cell phone. So, yes, yep. This will be up, Maria. It'll be up on my YouTube channel. You'll be able to find it and watch it in all its glory later. All right. So yeah. So dry erase is awesome. My son and I made an acrylic cell phone. So it was acrylic, and then it had an inlay dry erase, which was the screen. So he could draw his apps. So he could put what he wanted on his thing. So it was a high-tech, low-tech kind of thing. It was a cell phone shape. I even had a little camera, a little circle camera out of reflective acrylic, mirror acrylic. And then, you know, he could draw his apps and stuff on it. So there's no limit to the types of things you can do with your own creativity. So other starting up questions, other thoughts, things you're excited about, things you're struggling with, lining stuff up. Feel free to put in the chat. I know some people are just getting them, and some people have had it for a while. So whatever is helpful, feel free to let me know. Okay, let's get back into design then, and I'll go a little bit further. So one thing that's helpful, say you're making a bunch of something, is the array tool. So we say, well, let's pick a weird shape. Let's do this. So we're doing a bunch of fans. Let's zoom out. Alright, and let's make this. Switch back to millimeters. And we'll make them each, let's say 24 tall. Alright, so say you want a bunch of these shapes evenly spaced out. You could do this in another program, but you could also use the arrange tool, and you could do how many you want. So really quickly we could get a bunch of scales. So this is one way to do it. As some of you that have done stuff a lot, you'd go, wait, you're wasting space. So you could also, let's copy and paste, and then rotate this like so. And then I believe I can unite that and then array this. And then let's put the spacing down. And then, alright, it almost did what I wanted it to do. It's not really moving him closer. So slightly more space efficient. There's also, I'm not sure if there's a built-in one, but there are nesting tools where you can feed it through a tool, and it'll actually take your shapes and nest them together, having minimal space. I know they talked about the possibility of adding one in, but I don't think it's been integrated yet. But again, instead of making all those shapes one by one, it was a little bit faster to array them. Alright. Oh, it uses, okay, so it doesn't overlap. Got it. Okay. So again, there's nesting tools where you can feed your stuff in and it'll spit out. You'll tell it the bounds of your works or your work piece, and it'll nest things together. And I've used it for things like doll furniture, so things that have a crazy amount of details, and nesting can save you tons of material and tons of time, because you can spend a lot of time trying to put things super close together. All right. Any other questions? I'm trying to think of stuff that I've done that I haven't shared about. Things have been a little crazy. Yeah, so I've done a lot of cutting, a lot of material testing. I know Monkey has a settings document, I believe, connected with his Patreon, if I'm correct or incorrect. If not, support his Patreon anyway. And I have a community document I'm about halfway there with, but I'll share that once I get most of the things that were already there for the P1 updated. All right, good question. Monkey asked, learn from any mistakes. So I think the largest thing that I've learned is that in any mode, you need to make sure that stuff is under where the slats would be. So like the slat level, so the level where the slats are naturally at is really key. So I've had things that were above the slat level, and even if it measured correctly and all this other stuff, you can still hit it if you have things that are significantly above that slat level. So the level that the top of the slats would be at. So that was a big learning. Other mistakes. Curved surface, orientation matters a lot. So with curved surface mode, even though it can do a lot of scanning of stuff, having the least amount of drop between the top of the object and the bottom of the object makes it a lot easier to scan. So for example, with something like this, if I go like this, it's gonna be a lot harder. It's gonna be a lot harder for it to scan. So if I can have it doesn't have to be completely level, but if I can have not a ton of slope in addition to curve, it's just a lot easier to do it. There's a lot less changing it has to do, but also the scan goes a lot quicker. Most of my learnings with curved surface mode have been doing it really easily one time and then coming back and changing something and not thinking about it and then having it a lot harder. So things like it's automatically going to move 100 millimeters, so you might as well put your piece where it's going to start anyway instead of having to move things around. If you have your piece in a good position, it's going to make putting those points a lot easier. Can XCS be downloaded to an iPad? They were beta testing something a while back. I don't think that they ever released anything that was very robust. I know they were playing with the D1, but I don't believe that there's an XCS that's up to date for operating with the iPad. I could be wrong on that. Maybe a beta tester, will see this video and set me straight. I think they had basic functions that they were testing with the iPad, but it's not fully integrated. So you can't do all the things that I've been showing on the iPad app version. I could be wrong. Maybe Joe or others who have done testing would know better than I have. It was in its beginning stages, but I don't think that it's robust. So again, you can look at it on the App Store and download it and find out. But I don't think it's. I think you can start and stop D1 jobs. I don't know if they ever implemented it for the P2. I believe they were working on something with the F1 as well. So Michelle chimes in. So there is an iPad version. Okay. So there is one, but I think it's basic. I don't think that it has full functionality. So thanks for chiming in. There is one up, but I don't know. I don't think it's up to date with the full functionality that is currently available on the PC. So awesome. Thanks, gals, for setting me straight on that. All right. Any other thoughts that folks have? I know we're about at the hour. Okay, so F1 has full function, according to Michelle, but it's unknown about P2. Yeah, I was seeing some promotional stuff Twiggy was doing some shorts and things like that, showing specifically iPad with the F1. I'm not sure about the P2, so that is a good call. All right, we're almost at an hour. Looks like we're 33 seconds over an hour. Any last questions? As I said at the beginning, for those of you that weren't there, I'm going to be moving cross country, so it's probably going to be until early August before I'm back and recording things more often. I'll be active in the unofficial group, in the official CO2 group, and to some extent in the Shar's Craft Haven respective Facebook groups. And there's tons of people with lots of experience that are sharing what they're doing. And I'm excited to see what you all make. So please share in any of the Facebook groups stuff that you're doing. That's how the community grows and learns super quickly, is through people sharing what they're doing, sharing what they've learned through mistake. You know, honestly, you fall forward, you fail forward, and there's no shame in that, in learning. So if there's nothing else for the good of the cause, thank you all for joining me. As always, like, subscribe. If you haven't bought yet, feel free to use my affiliate link. It goes a long way to helping this keep going. And until I see you all again, have fun lasering and have a great night.